going from classes to an actual job, an actual profession was a huge transition, I think, mentally, because it's now a full-time job. Like I'm here, I'm supposed to be here. People rely on me, clients rely on me. And now it's more so that I don't get to just think about myself and whether or not I'm going to class. I actually have other people to think about.
This is Hollis Wright Managing Partner Josh Wright, and welcome to the Verdicts In Podcast Season 4. Here, our experienced attorneys break down the hottest legal stories making headlines and connect them to real cases from our firm's files. Each episode dives into current events, landmark verdicts, and trending legal debates, giving you practical insight into how law really works for you and in the real world. With candid conversations, expert commentary, and behind-the-scenes stories from active and past cases, The Verdicts In gives listeners a front-row seat to the intersection of news and personal injury law. Plus, in every episode, you'll pick up valuable legal advice straight from the front lines that can help you in your everyday life. Subscribe to The Verdicts In podcast wherever you get your podcasts and get great legal insight without the legalese. The Verdicts In podcast starts now.
All right, welcome into this week's episode of The Verdicts In. I'm Michael Eldridge, a partner here at Hollis Wright. We got, I think, a pretty fun topic today. It's a topic that I think every generation of lawyers thinks about on a yearly basis. We're talking about the transition from law school to becoming an actual lawyer. I asked if I could be the guest on this, but they decided that the amount of years that I've been practicing, apparently I can no longer speak on this. So I'm hosting, and we have got a good guest here who can certainly speak on it. The newest attorney at Hollis Wright, Blake Cordova. Blake, welcome in.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting to be here.
All right. So I graduated from law school in 2012. And I'm going to be honest with you. To me, that doesn't seem like it was that long ago. Now, apparently, the Birmingham Young Lawyers Association has decided that that is too long ago for me to call myself a young lawyer. That if that wasn't a sign enough, I think them asking me to host this show should be the dagger in the heart that I am no longer a young lawyer. So tell me, I'm just curious. I graduated from law school in 2012. How old were you in 2012?
So you would have graduated May 2012. I was 11 years old.
Okay. All right. So officially, that was the dagger.
I was 11. I turned 12 in June, so a month later.
All right. So that's the dagger. I'm no longer a young lawyer. You are officially a young lawyer. 6 months ago, you were a law student.
Right.
You went and took the bar.
Yep.
You passed the bar. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Now you are a licensed barred attorney.
Correct.
All right, let's start there, because I think every time that we have a new class of lawyers, and really every, I guess 13 years, you get kind of a new generation of lawyers. There's an adjustment from the lawyers in their 70s, their 50s, their 40s, late 30s, almost 40 like me, that you not only you have to adjust to the lawyers coming in from a substantive standpoint and the learning curve, but you get a new generation. Like you're classified as, I'm a millennial. You're Gen Z?
I think so.
Okay. We think you're Gen Z. Just personality-wise, what you grew up with. Because I'll tell you this, I want you to talk about the transition, but when I was coming out, my experience was going to be very different from yours, right? They were coming off the financial crisis. Law firms were more hesitant to hire. The pay was different. A lot of us just felt like if we got any job, that was good. Right. What has your experience been in terms of the transition from being 6 months ago a law student to now being a lawyer?
I think the transition has been pretty smooth. After studying for the bar, taking the bar, law school is definitely different than being a lawyer, and I think that's obvious. And they don't really tell you what being a lawyer is like in law school, and I think every experience for every person is different. So like in law school, I had 3 to 4 classes a day where I, would go to class and then I'd have free time. And I studied towards the end of the semester for my exams. And so it was almost like I was in college again, but a little more stricter, a little harder classes, harder tests, etc. And so going from classes to an actual job, an actual profession was a huge transition, I think, mentally, because it's now a full-time job. Like I'm here, I'm supposed to be here. People rely on me, clients rely on me. And now it's more so that I don't get to just think about myself and whether or not I'm going to class. I actually have other people to think about, other people to worry about, to make sure that I'm doing the right things. And I think that's the biggest difference in that transition. I think for me, it was a kind of a mental switch.
Yeah. Adulting is what you just described.
Right.
Adulting. I tell my wife all the time, because I always think about law school as being so fun. And yeah, I mean, that first year was tough.
Right.
But like the second, once you kind of get the hang of what you're doing day to day, you're right. You're just taking care of yourself. Mm-hmm. And there's like this independence of, as long as I have my lane taken care of and I'm taking care of myself, then I'll be okay.
Right.
I was telling my wife the other day, because I've got 3 kids now. I've all different things going on in my life. And then partner responsibilities here, like you just talked about, clients and trials coming up. And I think to myself, or I was telling my wife, I can't remember the last time there was a moment where someone didn't need something from me. Whereas like when you think about law school, it was like only you needed stuff from you. And so that's the fact that you realize that so early, that is the big difference to me is telling, because I think that some people it takes them a long time to make that adjustment. All right, so obviously a lot of lawyers get different types of jobs. What I want to talk about is when we come back, because I want to take a break, because I think that what you just described is the most important thing, is understanding like this is a real job, this is an adult. I want to know, because I honestly can't remember much about it, but what I want to know is, once you got to the point where you knew you were about to be a lawyer, what were your expectations of what the job would be? And I mean, not just like what you were going to get paid, but how many hours you were going to have to work, what it was going to look like, what was owed to you, what would be available to you. Because you earned your law degree, you passed the bar. There's some you did everything you were supposed to do. Some expectations had to come with that. You ended up at Hollis Wright, but I want to know what your thought process was leading up to that. So when we come back, we're going to talk about that. Remember, if you need anybody at Hollis Wright, you can find us on Facebook, Google, Instagram, all the social media, and we'll discuss that when we get back.
If you've been injured in an accident, you should never sign with a law firm without first speaking to an attorney at that firm. At Hollis Wright, you'll always speak with an attorney first. Call today and let Hollis Wright tell your comeback story.
The attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you.
When we started the show in 2011, my goal was to do what our firm does best: help people answer questions related to real-world legal issues they have in their lives in a way that's not intimidating to talk with a lawyer. If the issue is important to you, it's equally important to us, and we're ready to talk with you at no cost.
Yeah, oftentimes people are confronting various legal issues in their lives that really run the gamut of a lot of different legal practice areas, such as bankruptcy, criminal law, civil law, such as personal injury, divorces, domestic relations. And to be able to have a show once a week that covers those practice areas and answers people's questions in those areas, that's really the main objective of the show.
We use the resources of the many lawyers at our law firm to create a plan that has a lasting impact for each person that calls or texts. And we also give back to the community at the same time. We are here to serve you, the viewer, each week on The Attorneys.
All right, welcome back to the Verdict Stand. We've got Blake Cordova, the Gen Z lawyer here at Hollis Wright, and I'll have to remind him what the question is, because I know how those Gen Z brains work. They quick in and out with the TikToks and the Instagram reels. So what I wanted you to tell me about is, after graduating from law school, making over those hurdles like the bar, going into the job market, what were your expectations?
So I'm not sure I had a lot of expectations coming in. I think it was good, and I think it's a good process for law students especially to get clerkships during the summer and kind of get.
Where did you clerk?
I clerked in Pensacola at Zarzar Law in Pensacola, and I clerked in Birmingham at 2 different firms, Snable Law and then Alexander Shannara.
Okay.
So seeing especially seeing all 3 different firms. I mean, they're all personal injury firms, but there were 3 different structures, 3 different hours, 3 different requirements of me, and I think that experience kind of lent a hand to what I would need to expect as a full-time, because even though I am clerking there, I think it was less responsibilities. And so I believe my expectations once I'd passed the bar were it's a full-time job now. And I think the biggest expectation was that there were now people that I had to not prove myself to, but kind of show to them that, they made a good decision in hiring me. And I think that expectation is still ongoing.
It is, by the way.
100%, and I agree, and it should be. And so that's one thing that I've just always kind of thought about, especially after studying the bar, passing the bar. You're excited to find out results and to get all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, a day after the results come out, you start thinking, oh wow, here we go. Here's the real world, and here's where responsibilities kick in, and people are actually like looking at me going, did I make the right decision? And so that's where the expectation came in.
One of the things I remember, so I worked at in a litigation firm, but it was a defense firm, mostly doing trucking defense. And so while on the other side of the V, so to speak, than this, pretty similar type work. But I remember when I first started at the first firm I worked at, I just like being the young guy, to me, I felt a little vulnerable because I would listen to like lawyers talk, and sometimes I'd be in those meetings, I would be in those cases, and I have no idea what they're talking about, and I'm afraid to be like, hey, what are y'all talking about? Can somebody explain this to me? That I would literally go to the paralegals, and because it was like I didn't want to become discovered, and then like now I look back on that, and I'm like, it took those experiences for me to learn those things. Like, you don't know what you don't know until you know it. But is there any of those feelings? And look, you can call somebody out at Hollis, right? I don't want you to feel like you can't be honest, but because I do think that's a natural feeling where you're in those meetings and you think like, I have no idea what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. It's definitely a natural feeling, and it's definitely one that I felt a few times. But I will say that I usually don't have any problem asking questions, and I truly do feel like I'm okay with being wrong sometimes, but there is still that inherent, thinking in the back of my mind where I'm like, I don't want to ask a dumb question or ask a question that I should be able to find the answer to. And so even before I go to your office or Carter's office or John's office or anyone's office in the firm, I sit there for a second and try and figure out if there's a way that I can figure this out on my own. I would be better off.
Yeah, you spin your wheels.
Right. I'm spinning my wheels trying to figure it out. Then I'd be better off than, asking the question. They look at me like, this is the answer. You know what I mean? So I think there's definitely those moments where I struggle with that. But I also think to myself, and obviously, like you just said, this is something that you can kind of gain experience from. I think to myself that in a few years, I'll look back and probably wish that I asked more questions or wasn't afraid to just go into Michael's office and say, hey, look, I have no idea what I'm doing. Can you help me here?
And I'll tell you, the weird fear or the worst fear is that when you become a 10-year attorney and you have one of those questions and you're like, I think I'm supposed to know this. Right? And it happens mostly with Carter, with me, where I'm like, I'm going to check with John first.
Before I go to Carter.
Because at least then if John doesn't know, I can be like, well, John didn't know either.
Right. 100%.
But I think that's very natural, and I would encourage you, and I would encourage any young lawyer to understand that feeling of vulnerability that's not unique to you individually, as a young lawyer that's first starting out, and everybody's work situation is different. But I actually respect when somebody comes to what sounds like it would be to me, just, naturally, like, I've just known this for whatever the question is. It could be a question about, uninsured motorist or, some affirmative defense, or the process for subpoenaing records, just things that it's just we've just done so many times over and over again. But it's like there was a time when I didn't know what any of those things were or what they meant. And, find that person in your firm that you trust to go to those questions, because it's better than sitting and spinning your wheels. Because like you said, there's other things.
Well, I think that's the greatest thing about working here at Hollis Wright is that I've probably been, actually there's no probably, I know for certain I've been to every single attorney's office here with a random question, and it doesn't matter what they're doing. I think the first thing I say when I walk in is, do you have a second? And there's never a no or not right now. It's always yes. And they're always willing to answer my questions. So I think that's the good thing. Obviously, it helps that, you can gain a little comfortable with one attorney, but having the ability to go to all 5 or however many are here and ask questions is, I think, pretty awesome that I'm, able to do that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Every time you come and ask me a question, you immediately start putting on my on my putting surface in my office. So I'm always talking to your back, watching you
listening.
Yeah, watching you miss 6-inch putts.
Yeah, I'm listening.
6-foot putts. Well, yeah, I think that's exactly right. I hope that we breed that, because being a part of a firm, regardless of what kind of firm it is, and obviously some of these bigger firms, there's firms within firms, but from the standpoint of having the people, because a firm is supposed to be a team,
right? And
there's rookies on every NFL football team, just like there's veterans. And so I would encourage, the more seasoned lawyers, in any kind of firm, regardless of the style of firm it is, whether it's a plaintiff's firm, a defense firm, big law, a firm of 3 people just hanging a shingle, that's really important. All right, when we come back, I want you to talk about and kind of explain to us, now that you're in the mix, what your wants are, right? So we talked about your expectations, but it's like now I have to get into this, like where do you see this going in the future? And tell us, what does Blake want? What is he feeling in that moment now that he's settled in? He's an attorney. He figured out what adulting was, that there are people relying on him, that he has to ask questions when he doesn't know those things. So when we come back to the next segment, we're gonna get, where does Blake see this going from here?
Injuries you sustain in an accident don't define who you are, but the firm you choose will. Choose wisely and select a firm with over 20 years of success of winning personal injury cases. Let Hollis Wright tell your comeback story.
If you've been injured in an accident, trust the local Alabama lawyers who've been helping local people for more than 20 years. At Hollis Wright, our personal injury attorneys are right here in Birmingham and are ready to tell your comeback story.
All right, Attorney Cordova, we have talked about the transition from being a law student to being a lawyer, the big difference being adulting, and then the expectations of getting through law school and what your expectations were actually in terms of the jobs that would be available and what the job would be like once you accepted a job. And now it is, as a young lawyer, I always remember people talking about like partner track and have you ever seen Legally Blonde?
Yeah.
That seems like a movie. Yeah, Blake's a big Dancing with the Stars guy.
Very much
like
so.
He's a hunter and a fisherman, and we're sitting there one day at lunch, and I'm sure we were talking about college football that happened the week before, and Blake just drops on us. He's like, I love Dancing with the Stars.
Dancing with the Stars is phenomenal.
Yes. So it does not surprise me that you've seen Legally Blonde.
Right.
But yeah, she always talks about if I could be a partner by 30. And so like those are the things that were in my head. And that's looking back to me, it seems a little silly that I cared about those things. But, that was a benchmark I think that people talked about. And maybe that's your benchmark, but as you sit and reflect, and it's a little bit of existential attorney question of like, where do you see yourself in 10 years? But like, what are your hopes, honestly, as both individually as an attorney and here at Hollis Wright?
I would start off by saying I think my hopes or wants is to become an attorney like all the attorneys above me. And I know that's a standard general answer, but it's true. Like I want to be a Michael Eldridge. I want to be a Carter Clay, Josh Wright, John Spade, Craig Shirley.
In that order.
Correct. In that exact order. Yes. Like I want to be someone that is experienced and has been here and working in personal injury for a long time. I want to never stop learning. I want to be the guy that, has a young lawyer come into his office and has every answer. And I want to be able to provide those answers and, have someone like myself look up to someone like you. I want to be in that position, I think, at some point. I've never really thought about, where I would end, whether it's a partner at a firm or if it's starting my own firm at some point. I've never really considered that. I mean, I'm not a big think in the future type of guy. I kind of live in the moment. But obviously, it's crossed my mind, where would I be in 10 years as an attorney, or where am I going to be when I'm 40? Like how far along am I going to be? But if I had to sit here right now and say where I want to be, it would be in the position that each of y'all are in. Just someone that knows what they're doing and is good at it.
Yeah. One of the things that if I was reflecting and thinking back, because you say that an attorney with all of the answers, and I think that's a great aspiration, but it's never going to happen, right? And it has nothing to do with you. It's just that person doesn't exist. Carter and I are having a conversation within the last week, and I won't go through all the context of how we got here, but I was telling him a story about John Spade and I trying this case together down in Opelika, and my one shot prior to this of doing a voir dire, I figured out that it's just the way my brain works and my personality is that I'm just not good at it. Mm-hmm. Structurally, I was not good at it. In the moment, I was not good at it. I like trying to keep all of the names of the people in this venire. I got a little too ADD. I think I got a little argumentative with people at times, right? And I'm just trying to get information from them, but then the way they're giving, it was like this just didn't work for me. And John, at this trial, I said, you do the voir dire, because I didn't want to put myself in that situation again.
Right.
I don't know. John says, I've never done a voir dire before. And I was like, hey, now's, no time better than the present.
Right.
And I mean, John stood up and was like a duck in water. I mean, and from that moment forward, it was like having this self-awareness of, I think if you sat John down and we went through some things, he would tell you some things like in that moment, I'd bring Mike in, or I'd bring Craig in, or I'd bring Carter in because they do this better than me. That I wish I could tell myself to have a self-awareness of that this is not it's not a zero, it's not like this is the lawyer. Like you've made it as a lawyer. It's a sum of many parts and recognitions of this is a strength of mine.
Right.
And it takes going through the practice of the law and the experiences, and especially if you do it with people that love you and care about your cases and care about, prosecuting them the right way, that's what I've learned, which is I think your answer is really good.
Right.
But it's having that understanding of, if somebody walked in my office today and was like, tell me about state agency immunity, I'd be like, you can go to that door over there,
right?
Talk
100%.
to Mr. Clay, or you can go to that door over there and talk to Mr. Shirley. Yeah. I'm not the guy to talk to about that.
I think naturally, just being a very competitive person, I've always strived for perfection, and I think it's not a check to what I can do, but it is good, and it's a realistic check to know that I'm not going to have the answer to everything, but like you said, surrounding yourself with people, a firm, family that can help you get along, and recognize that is kind of maybe that should be my aspiration. Maybe that should be my want, is to just be in that position that I can rely on others whenever maybe I'm not so good at something, or if I'm not perfect at something. I think that's a good realization that you just brought to me.
All right, before we wrap this thing up, the whole point of this episode was to put you on the spot. That wasn't the whole point. But I am going to put you on the spot. Okay. I remember through the hiring process, after you passed the bar and leading up to you getting your bar results, you called me somewhat in confidence, and I was kind of asking you some questions, and you were like, I've never been in this situation before. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, going through the hiring process. Obviously, we were not sure. You had other options, you had other firms, other people you clerked with. Tell me why ultimately you chose to work at Hollis Wright. What went into that decision looking back on it?
The main thing is the culture that I've just nonstop heard about since I was in law school, the culture that surrounds Hollis Wright. It's obviously a well-known firm in Birmingham, but just even outside of Birmingham, take it to the law school and all the people that are from different places around, the country that are going to this law school. The first few firms that we talked about as 1Ls was Hollis, especially if your interest in personal injury is Hollis Wright and Clay. And obviously I had met you through law school, but even before then or at that point, my goal was to work for a firm like Hollis Wright. And I've always wanted to work for, I don't want to say a smaller firm, but just a closer knit firm that's, well respected in Birmingham. And I think whenever that opportunity came up, it was a no-brainer for me because it's exactly what I wanted. And obviously it matched the culture that I wanted to surround myself with. And then I'd like to give you some creds here. You're pretty much one of the biggest reasons because of how much I enjoyed being a student of yours, being a student on trial team of yours, that, if I would surround myself with Michael, then I can be okay with wherever or with whoever else is there. As long as Michael's around, like I'd feel comfortable.
You passed the test.
That's a good one, right?
Good job, Blake. All right, Blake Cordova. He is officially the young attorney. I am no longer the young attorney. I'm the old attorney who is a professor.
I think I'm the only person in this building born in 2000.
Don't go around telling people that.
I won't. This goes nowhere.
All right. Well, it goes out to all the places that you listen to your podcasts.
Correct.
You can find the verdicts in there. You can always find a Hollis Wright attorney. If you call, you will talk to an attorney. You can find us online, on our website, on Facebook, on Instagram, basically all the social medias. Anywhere you listen to your podcast, check us out next time. This is The Verdict's In. Thanks, guys.